Hi there, I'm Angela. Welcome to my channel or welcome back. Thanks for stopping in. As you can see, I'm not in my garden today. I'm in my sewing room. And in fact, the only garden related thing that I usually do during January is to plan the coming year's garden and order seeds if I need them. Last year I stocked up so much on seeds that I'm trying to be on a seed diet this year. I'll show you my stash here in a moment, and it's almost embarrassing. I just went crazy last year. So I think I have enough seeds to last for a long time. So I'm not buying seeds this month, but I am still going to plant my garden. And I thought I would share that process with you. So it's not something that I sit down and do all at one time. So this video may be filmed over a few different sessions, if you will, just so you can see the whole process that I go through. Stay tuned.
So if you'll excuse the sewing mess right there, we're going to focus on the seeds. So I have both of these bins full. These are, if you're interested, I'll put a link to these cases down below. It's not affiliated or anything, but I love these and I find them perfect for seed storage. It's an art bin that I got off of Amazon. And here we go. Oh my gosh. At this time last year, I had one of these and it was pretty full. Last year, I'm telling you, I just went crazy, crazy, crazy. So I will not be buying any new seeds. I'm going to really hold myself to no seeds this year at all. So say your prayers for me because, that's an addiction. And if you want like all the juicy details of how this is organized, I start off, that's the second one. They're just alphabetized. So we start with the A. This one's Agastache. This is a flower. I think maybe it's considered an herb. It's a mint. And they just go in order. And so like that, all the way down to zinnias. Yeah, I'm definitely well stocked on seeds. Also, last year I really started seed saving in earnest. So I plan to do a lot of seed saving this year. And maybe it could be a goal to never ever buy any seeds ever again, or maybe just a couple of packs a year of those really unusual varieties that I can't resist, or something like that. There's a lot to be said for seed saving. And the reason that I put the individual seed packets inside its own sandwich size Ziploc is because oftentimes you can't get those seed flaps to seal back together. And I don't want to lose any seeds, and I don't want them falling out and getting all mixed up with other seeds. And I do reuse the Ziploc bags, so definitely they're never wasted. I reuse those all the time.
So now that you've seen all my seeds, you have a pretty good idea of what I'm starting with. So that leads me into the first thing that I do when I start planting my garden is deciding what I'm going to grow. So because I already have collected a massive amount of seeds over the years, I do intend to grow at least one and maybe a few of each thing. Each If there's 5 different tomato types, then I want to grow a couple of each of those tomato types and so forth. If you're just starting out and just starting to build your seed collection and you aren't sure where to start, I would say there's a couple of different approaches you could take. So you might want to start with just the veggies that you actually like to eat. So you're going to be putting a lot of time and effort and maybe money into a successful garden. So it's really nice when you actually enjoy eating the things that you're growing. Another approach might be to grow things which could be a little costlier to purchase in the store or at the farmer's market. Maybe a good example of that would be asparagus, although that's not usually you plant the seeds and then you're harvesting the same year. You're going to have to invest a couple or 3 years into that to get a harvest. But anytime I've bought asparagus, I remember it being pretty pricey. So if you love asparagus and you would like to save a little money, you could start an asparagus bed growing. So that could be one option. And then another thing that you could do is to grow varieties of a certain vegetable that you just can't find at the store or at the farmer's market. When you look in the seed catalogs, there's seems like hundreds of varieties of tomatoes. But yet, if you go to your local grocery store, I'm pretty sure they don't have nearly that many varieties, maybe a couple, maybe. It's more like what they can get is what they can sell. So you might choose to go that route, just growing those unusual varieties that you just can't find anywhere else. One other factor that you're going to probably need to take into account when planning your garden is how much space you have. And I would say don't underestimate a small space. You can do a lot just in pots. So, for instance, say you don't have a lot of in ground space or place to put raised beds. If you have a big porch or a deck, as long as it gets the right amount of sun exposure, you can grow almost anything in a pot. In fact, that's how I started off gardening. We lived in the city then, and we did have a small yard, and it was just grass, and we didn't want to do a garden out in the yard because that was like our dog's play space. So we did have a pretty good sized deck, and I started just by growing tomatoes and squash in pots on our deck, and they thrived. They did really, really well. So it's definitely doable. And even now, I still grow a lot of things in pots and containers. Even though I have a number of raised beds and I do some things in ground, I still grow a lot in containers. So it's definitely doable. If you are just starting out, I would say maybe a big thing to keep in mind is that it's better to start small and then build your garden every year. You'll find that the garden requires a lot of your time and attention. There's a lot of maintenance and tending that goes into it. And I feel like that if you start off too big, like over ambitious, it could become overwhelming as the season goes on, as far as maintaining watering, harvesting, weeding, if there's any insect and pest control that you need to do. Whereas if you start small, you can ease your way into it, and then every year just make your garden a little bit bigger. I think that that's definitely a good approach. It seemed to work out well for our garden, and now it's pretty much an addiction. The garden gets bigger every year, but if I look back and think, way back when I started, if I had started with the gardening space that we have now and tried to plant all of that, I think I could have easily gotten overwhelmed and maybe been like, oh, this is too much. What was I thinking? So start small and let it grow from there. So I mentioned that I do have a list of seeds that I keep on my computer, and as I buy new seeds, as I used to buy new seeds, I would just add it to my list, and I put that list into a spreadsheet. And I kind of can get carried away with documentation and logging things and tracking. It's just like a quirk that I have. So I have my list of seeds in a spreadsheet, which I will show you, and then I have different columns for each factor, such as how far apart to space the seeds, how deep the seeds need to go, when is the right time to plant that particular crop, and things like that. So I will show you that spreadsheet now, and you might think, whoa, that's way too much. I don't want to go into that much detail. It's totally not necessary to go into that much detail. I do it just because I'm kind of a nerd like that with data. And I do find it to be helpful to have everything right there in one table or chart right in front of me if I have questions. So I do find it to be helpful. Maybe for the average person, it might be like, whoa, that's just a little bit crazy. So I'll show it to you. And I would say if you find it helpful or if parts of it are helpful, go ahead and implement it and give it a try. I do find that my system kind of evolves from year to year as I find different things that are more helpful or less helpful, and that's the whole point of learning and growing and making it better over time. So hang on, I'll show you my spreadsheet. Master spreadsheet, just simply called Garden Log, just plain and simple. And I have a bunch of different tabs here, which I'll kind of go over each one of those, or at least a few of them, so you can see the kind of information that I track. The first one is 22 planting, and I did a similar thing for 2021. So in here, I just have all my seeds listed. So for instance, what we're seeing right now is peppers, and I have a bunch of different kinds of peppers. Any features about the seed: heirloom, hybrid, organic, what type of pepper, hot, sweet, etc., where I got the seeds from, and the year that the seed packet was produced. I have information in this next column H regarding soil temperature, although this is not complete. And you can see, like for instance, for all these peppers, they pretty much all need to get planted outside. Like I start them indoors, but they go outside for good once the nighttime temperatures are around 60 degrees. Planting depth, spacing. You can see that there's a lot of blanks, and I just haven't gotten around to filling it all in, or it just wasn't needed or something like that. Days to germination, days to harvest, and you can see I'm lacking a lot of information. Some of this I'm kind of filling in as I go, and then oftentimes I forget to go back and record it, but it's my goal to do so and make it better and better. When to sow and whether that's indoor or outdoor. So this is all this information so far has just been the characteristics of the seeds or the plants themselves. Then over here, what we've got is all the information pertaining to my specific garden, such as the date when I sowed them, total number of seeds or cells planted, the date they germinated, if I started them indoors, what date did I bump them up into a new container, and then the date planted outside, where did I plant them, how many total number of seedlings ended up being planted outside, and then how many successful plants did I have from all those seedlings. So I've kind of, like I said, this is a lot of information. Any special things that I noted, I'll put here in notes. It's a lot. Oftentimes I find that I don't get around to going back and filling it all in, although I would have to say last year I did really well with filling this all in, and I do find this information to be helpful, especially germination date. Like the seed packet will give you a germination date range, like 7 to 10 days or something like that. But how long did it take for those seeds to actually germinate here at my place? So I find that helpful. And then the date of first harvest is always very helpful too. And then on a separate tab, I've got 2022 harvest. So actually I copied this one over from 2021, and it still has some data in it that I need to go back and clear out. This one is a little bit more cumbersome, and I can't say that I'm really good about logging every single time I harvest. And if you've been gardening for a while, you probably know that as the season rolls on and you're right in the thick of things in August, September, and the harvest is just going like gangbusters, oftentimes you really don't stop to record how much you harvest. I do find it helpful, though, for nothing else, to get a general idea. Like exact numbers aren't as important because I'm not a farmer and I'm not taking these to the farmer's market to sell. These are just for our personal use. What I've found is helpful, though, is to get a general idea of how much harvest you're taking in for each particular plant and variety. And the reason why that's helpful is then the specific crops or plants that will do well for you. And so you may decide those are the ones that I want to keep growing year after year. So exact numbers aren't as important for me personally, but overall, how much did this produce for me? I do find that to be very, very helpful. And then this third tab over, this is something I just started to do last year, and I'm kind of continuing it into this year, is to record the forecasted temperatures, the high and the low. And then once we start getting closer in to things being moved outside, I start recording the air temperature and the soil temperature outside in my space. That helps me to know when certain things can safely go outside. And then it might make more sense for me to show you the one I actually kept last year. So this is for 2021. As you can see, these are like December dates. I kind of fell off there, but early, like I said, it gets really, really busy as the gardening season goes on, and the data recording does definitely fall off. So I some of these I didn't record the soil or the air temperature. That's because by then everything was already outside. But if we go back up early into the year, uh, here's April of last year, and for instance, April 10th. I rearranged my columns a little bit from last year, but what is important here is that I did record the daily high and low forecasted. I also recorded the soil temperature, and I just randomly chose one of the beds, like raised bed 5 or raised bed 6, to stick my thermometer in, and it just stayed out there all year long. And then I recorded the soil temperature and what was the atmosphere temperature at that same time, and then what time did I take the temperature. I found this to be very helpful because it takes all the guesswork out of, is it okay to go ahead and move my plants out or not? Is the soil too cold still? So this was very, very helpful. And then just as importantly, I used this particular table to record days when we had frost. So the idea is you need to know when your last frost is, because in addition to soil temperature and air temperature, obviously frost matters as far as when you can move things out. So for instance, on April 3rd, yes, that morning there was a frost. Then no, we're getting close to what our average last frost date is. And then we had a frost on April 16th. No, another one on April 21st. And here, around April 25th is our average last frost date. And then we had a frost on April 22nd. And I thought that was probably going to be our last one, so I colored it pink. But I didn't assume anything. I still kept watching because we have had frost into May before. And it looks like we did have another frost on May 1st, so now that one's pink just to catch my eye. Still kept watching for it and keeping my eyes open to the weather forecast, and nothing has been like permanently set out at this point, so I could pull it back in if needed. So now we're well into May and we're not going to get any frost from mid-May on. Then if I did tend to make notes about what the actual weather was that day, just sunny, rainy, what have you. And then I thought, I tell you, I'm a data recording nerd. I thought maybe it would be helpful if I start recording when I did deep watering. That way I can keep my eyes on the rain that's forecast. When was the last time I deep watered? And we've gone a few days without rain, do I need to go ahead and water? You can also just go out there and dig around in the soil and see how dry it is as well. Also, last year was the first time that I've used any kind of pesticides in my garden at all because we were having such an issue with the slugs. So I did use some Sluggo, which I did not want to do, but the slugs were destroying everything. So I made note of the days when I applied that and where. And then also I did end up using some neem oil on our nectarine tree later in the season when we were having a bad problem with Japanese beetles. I don't think that the neem oil really took care of that though, and I'm going to have to look at something else this year. I also keep, I track costs that I spend on my garden each year. And then I did start a new tab for houseplants as far as when I fertilize them. So it's not perfect and I do miss a lot of days, but overall I find it to be very, very helpful. So if you stuck through that whole craziness of my spreadsheet, which gets a little bit more complex every year, more power to you. I hope that you found it helpful, or maybe you at least found a couple of takeaways that you could implement in your own garden that would help your process a little bit. So I think in order to keep this video from becoming terribly long, I'll go ahead and just stop there. And in the next video, I will show you the layout that I've drawn of our gardening space and why I find that to be useful as far as helping me know what to plant where and where it can make the most sense and take most advantage of the layout and the sun exposure and things like that. And I've also found that it helps with succession planting and crop rotation. So I hope you'll come back for that, and thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Angela signing off with a friendly reminder to get out there and play in the dirt. Bye.